I think we are there. Yes, Brandon?
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. It's Jace. You might know me as Lady Berica, but today I'm out of Geesh, coming to you for our monthly Q&A talk. Thank you for joining us. Q&A talks connect rural parents and caregivers of LGBTQIA plus youth with resources they need to ensure their children can grow up safe and authentically. Q&A Talks is an initiative of Project Q&A and Independence Public Library, and is made possible by the library's Transform Communities focus on rural and small library grant from the American Library Association. Tonight, we are pleased to have Jody McClure, founder of Beyond Limits Mind Wellness. And I have some stuff written here, but I would like to also just ask you to tell us what you do there.
Okay. Thank you, Jason, and thank you to Project Q&A for inviting me to come on and do this. It's my hope and passion that through my story and what I've survived and gone on to do in my life gives hope to parents of LGBTQ children, that life not only can go on, but it can go on brilliantly and very successfully. So my primary title with my company is a certified life coach through the American Association of Christian Counselors. I do take the Christian approach. I know that's something that is rare to hear, even in Kansas. And so that is the avenue that I speak on. And I do it only because of my personal journey and what I've learned on my own through seeking a relationship with Christ and things like that. So I do specialize in LGBTQ support for the individual with the challenges associated with being gay in particular, because the same-sex orientation is the aspect of it that I struggled with. But I also work with the families who may be struggling to understand, that don't know what that looks like, that don't know how to care for a child who is expressing feelings of that nature. So that is the specialty that I work in, not to say that I don't work with people of all kinds. So it's just my passion to come alongside anyone who is struggling to overcome obstacles and challenges in their life, to give them inspiration, to give them empowerment, and new perspectives on how to navigate those challenges. So that's basically what I do through my company.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to hear what you have to say today. Tonight, Jody is here to speak to us about being LGBTQ and the Bible. So take it away and have fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think the first thing I want to say in presenting this is 100% my story. I don't claim to be a Bible scholar whatsoever. I have no formal education in biblical training or anything like that. So what I have learned and discovered is through my own journey, through my diligently seeking out my truth and what I can do to survive as a healthy human being and help other people through this world. So that's the first thing I want to say to start this off. And the other thing is, I place no label on myself. Like the name of my company indicates, is Beyond Limits. And I think no matter what kind of label we take on in life and put on ourselves, we place limits on ourselves. And I like to break people through limitations to help them see their potential. And so that's the other thing that I really speak into is the label portion of anything and the limitations. So with that, I will just go on and start to tell a little bit about my story. I was born and raised in the middle of Kansas, country girl at heart, loved my pony and being with my older brother and older sister on the farm. My family was a well-known middle class, hardworking family in my area. And I came from a good home that I did not have any fears of being hurt or kind of, I didn't have any fears as a child. When I put my head down on the pillow, I knew that I was going to get good sleep and wake up in a good spot. So I had no fears of my father and mother other than getting my butt whooped when I did something wrong, which did happen. I got myself disciplined on a couple different occasions. But growing up on the farm, I loved every aspect of it. I was a tomboy, and I wanted to do whatever my older brother did. And as long as I was kind of following after his footsteps, I felt like I was pretty cool. And the years just went by, and in high school, I became very athletic, got on the tennis team and softball and things like that. And I dove into my academics, and I was very driven to be successful. And at that point in time, I mean, we're talking in the 90s, I didn't know what sexuality meant. Some of my friends were kind of boy crazy and things, and I really couldn't care less about it. I just wanted to play tennis and softball and do my thing. And even earlier on as a child, I felt a little different for some reason, and a little different than my family. And I felt a little bit out of place in my family always. And I didn't really know why, and never did equate it to a sexuality thing whatsoever. But then ultimately my friends got on the when are you going to start dating bandwagon when I was a sophomore. And there was a boy that I went to school with, and he asked me out, and I was not interested whatsoever. And so 3 different times I gave him every excuse under the sun as to why I wouldn't go out with him. And then finally he said, if I cut my hair and change my clothes and put on cologne, will you go out with me? And I was like, man, any guy that is just that adamant about taking me out to dinner, I guess I'll do it. So I said yes. And that date turned into marriage. And we went all through high school together, all through college. And ultimately, the time came for me to say yes in marriage to him. And at this point, as I got older, I did feel a more strong urge of, the attraction with him just was not there. I didn't know what it was. I was very confused, and there was no way that I would admit that I was struggling with my sexuality whatsoever. And I knew that if my family knew, it would not be good at all. So basically, the little role that I had in my 5-people family, being the last of the children, I was kind of the poster child of a people pleaser, which happens in every family dynamic. There's certain roles that people are put into, and being the people pleaser, I thought I could just stuff all of my needs and just continue to do whatever I thought my parents would be pleased with. My nagging gut would cry at the thought of upsetting them or making them disappointed in me. And so at every turn, I would stuff any other kind of feeling other than I'm going to marry this man and go on and have the life that my parents want for me. Well, ultimately, we did get married, and the intimacy aspect of it was not there. And the only thing that would make it be there is if I drank. And he knew that, and he saw that. And through my tears, he asked me what was wrong. And I said, I did not know. And he, at that point, after a year of marriage, was ready to start having children. And that's when I just said, I can't do this. There's no way I could bring a child into this world whatsoever being the mess that I am in. And so ultimately, I never said to him that I was struggling with my sexuality, and he didn't ask. And so it was an unspoken thing, and we did divorce, and it was one of the hardest, if not the hardest time in my life. And at that time, I was a stockbroker and I owned a pottery store. We were considered very successful at age 25 years old. We had everything going for us on the outside appearance. And I knew that it was going to be very hard to move on from him. First of all, because he was my best friend. He was the guy that, I mean, if you took the intimate aspect out of it, the physical attraction, he was my best friend, and we rode four-wheelers together. We had a blast. And so I lost my best friend, and I knew that if my parents found out why this divorce was really happening, that they would come unglued. And ultimately they did find out, and they came more than unglued. It was a nightmare. And basically, the worst that I thought it could be would have been a cakewalk for me. And when they found out, it was a pull out the Bible and use everything I can do or say to make you change your mind, and you are not this way, and we're not having this. And if you choose to be this way, you are out of our family. You will not get to see your nieces and nephew. You're out, basically. And so ultimately that led me to drink pretty heavily, and I sold my book of business with the stockbroking, and I sold my pottery store. And I'll never forget this part of it. We lived on my parents' property, and they had a farm that with acreage, and there was a house on there that my husband and I lived on, and they told me to get out. And so one evening I was down there packing my bags and boxing things up, and my brother came down, and he said he wanted to talk to me, and I said I had nothing to say and to get out of my house. And he basically said, "This isn't your house," and grabbed me by my neck and threw me outside and said, "Now we're not in your house. I've got something to say to you." And so he continued to grab me by the neck and tell me that I was a disgrace, an abomination, and that I didn't even deserve my name. And that was one of the hardest things that a person can hear, let alone the desire just to make my family happy. To have something like that happen was unbearable. And so, not surprising, that led me to a suicide attempt that night. And I was actually sitting down in a walk-in closet of all places, the closet I was trying to come out of. But I was sitting there with my husband's gun that he had left in the process of moving. And I was trying to load that gun. And I just remember looking through the tears and everything, fumbling around for the bullet or bullets. And I found a couple and loaded the gun, and I cried out to God. And I said, "If there is a reason that I should not rid the world of this abomination, you need to tell me right now." And I audibly heard from God that night. And the words I heard were, "Fix your gaze on me, my child. You're in my hands." And the minute that happened, I just remember the sense of peace that fell over me. And I laid the gun down, and there were some clothes on the floor in that closet. And I laid down in that pile of clothes and I fell asleep. And the next morning I woke up, and there I was alive. And I thought, okay, well, I have work to do, and I don't even know where to start. And I laid there and cried for hours. I didn't even know what to do next, but I picked myself up and I went on and got my clothes and left and tried to start over and make my way one day at a time. And I knew after having the Bible thrown at me, I just knew that I didn't want to read that book. Why would I read a book that told me and just confirmed how horrible of a person I am? And so I struggled with that internally, until one day I just continued to have the nagging urge of read that book and find out for yourself. And so it was not easy. And I struggled for many, many years, reading that book and trying to understand it. And even through the midst, I did get into poor relationships. And I drank way too much in the process of trying to figure all that out. Meanwhile, the words from my parents, words like, you will never be successful. You will never have true friends. Everybody will always make fun of you. You know, you're not going to go to heaven and inherit the kingdom. Those words that they told me continued to cut very deeply. And no matter what I did, they would ring in the back of my head. And when things would start to go good, I would hear those words that I would never be successful. And I believed it. They continued to knock me down. Even as I continued to seek the word of God for me, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy thing for me to keep moving, but those words continued to ring in my ear, and I made the choice to believe that word that I didn't know, that audible voice that I didn't know where it came from, over the voice of my parents. And so deep down, I knew differently. I knew that somehow there was something else there, and I was supposed to be alive. And so even through my mess, I continued to read that Bible. And then one day it became clear that all the characters in the New Testament were as a big a mess, if not worse, most of them, than me. And God used them for amazing things, to do spectacular miracles, and used a killer and a liar, and Noah was a known alcoholic. God used prostitutes. He used all of these different characters in the Bible, female, which even at the time was not used or even spoken of. Just being a female in and of itself was not something that was favorable back in biblical days. And so I began to see my life reflected in all of these characters in the Bible. And I just sat back going, I think that God really wants to use me. And as I continued to think along that path, the whole time I continued to be successful in my professional career. I went on to do multiple other things in the finance industry, and very much loved it. Meanwhile, drinking the whole time, way too much. And the reason that I kept drinking is because in the back of my mind still, I heard those words saying, you're never going to be successful. And ultimately, that word, or those words, would keep ringing, and it would keep taking me back to alcohol and seeking God at the same time. And I knew, though, that then God knew my heart, and he knew what I was after, and that sometimes the things of this world and the comfort that we need comes from the external world around us. And I know that he knew that for me until ultimately one night he let me have it again and shook my world up one more time. And so I had been probably 8 years into studying the Bible pretty diligently, and I began to pray a prayer that was a prayer that King David had said before, which was, Lord, search my heart for things that are not useful for you, and basically remove it. And I prayed that. Meanwhile, still drinking, but I was working, I was professional, I was owning my own home, I was doing everything that a useful citizen would do. And so I thought, I'm not hurting nobody, I'm good. And I prayed that prayer every night for 8 months, until ultimately he decided to remove the alcohol from me. And he did that by means of DUI. And I had always said to myself, I don't need to change. This isn't hurting anybody. My profession is fine. I'm making money. This doesn't hurt me. When I got that DUI, I knew that it was God saying, you got to set that down now because it's time for you to grab onto your faith a little deeper. And I was terrified when I got that DUI. I'm the kind of person who cries to get pulled over by a cop that says that my window tint is too dark, which actually happened to me one time, and I cried the entire weekend. I'm a baby. I don't like to get in trouble whatsoever. And so this was beyond words for me, going out and getting this DUI. And fortunately, I hadn't drank much. It was on a Tuesday night, and I blew just over. And at the time, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I did end up getting into some trouble with that. But fortunately, because I am terrified of the law, to be in trouble by them, I hadn't been in any trouble before. So I ultimately got a diversion after I followed through on 6 months of certain hell that they put you through. I accomplished all that and kept moving forward, but I quit drinking. And that was the key, because I knew that night that I couldn't have that. That was at that point, I was affecting my life. I was affecting my livelihood, and I couldn't do that. And meanwhile, I had my company and a book in the back of my mind that I wanted to write. And so when that DUI happened, I ultimately sat down over a 2-month period and I wrote a book. And that book is called Mud Puddles Path to Peace. And it basically lays out the story that I just told you about my struggle. And it puts on in some other little things in there in the midst of it. But I accomplished that during that struggle. And I took that challenge and that obstacle again, one day at a time, knowing that there was a reason for it. And the verse Jeremiah 29:11 was actually sent to me via text message by a friend that very night, that I was in a cop car with a DUI. I couldn't believe it. I got back to my phone and there was a text message that said, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." And I cried uncontrollably, in gratitude that he loved me enough to take it away. And that's when I got the strength to do it. And I did not have another drop of alcohol for 3 years. And what happened then is I began to find strength and heal my problem, heal the trauma from what my family had done and said, and put those efforts into something more powerful like that book and this company. And so getting a grip on alcohol was huge for me, and it turned my life around. And then since then, there's been other struggles, luckily not alcohol related, or sexuality related or anything like that, but just human life problems that I was able to dig into my faith to help pull me out of it, because I knew that my God was a faithful God and he would pull me through. And I didn't see it as punishment or reprimand for living a horrible life, that it was him trying to refine me into someone that he could use for the glorification of his kingdom. And so I fall back on that. And in all of these studies that I did, one thing that kept coming up, and of course, with my family, was the clobber verses. I don't know who all is familiar with the clobber verses from the Bible, but that's kind of the coined term for them. And it's the, I don't know, 6 or 8 verses out of 32,600 verses in the Bible. We want to focus on these 8 that try to prove a point how bad same-sex relations are. And so I dug into studying those. And again, this is my perception that I got from the Bible as I sought my relationship with God and as I studied the time period in which the Bible was written, who wrote these verses, what was going on in the culture at that time. And so I did these studies myself, and I encourage anyone that's struggling and wants a relationship with the Lord to dig in yourself and find the answers, kind of like I did. I think that's where it happens most powerfully. But there's Genesis, Leviticus, First Corinthians, First Timothy, Book of Romans, all of these verses that have something to do with sexuality as our culture sees it, or same-sex sexuality, that it's not talked about in terms of the culture in which it was written. And the thing about the Bible that people get most confused about, in my estimation, is they put all these other things around, what God's mad at and who and all this different stuff. And it's like the thing back then, and what was the abominations of abominations, all came down to who you're worshiping and how you're worshiping. And if you're worshiping any other God but Almighty God, he was mad. And back in that time, this was the birth of Christianity. People tend to forget that. And back in that time, there were gods of all kinds, and people worshiped idols of all kinds and man-made idols. And the worship went to all different levels of alcohol and drug use, to get into like this euphoric state to be closer to their God. And sexual groups would get together and have sexual relations in hopes of getting closer to the God that they were worshiping. And so a lot of those verses have to do with that right there, with the New Testament in particular, with Paul preaching to these churches. There were people that were saying they wanted to be Christians, but they kept getting led back into these other groups with worshiping other gods and all of these fashions of sexual activity. And so that's first and foremost what was going on then. And the other thing was the control element of what was happening during this time is the sexual relations that we're having was over dominance, and it was actually rape, male to male rape was going on then. And so those are the things that was happening. It was not as we see it today with normal people finding same-sex attraction and wanting to be in a partnership with someone that they know how to love and know how to receive love from. That's not what it was talking about. And so there's so many other levels to the Bible, just the different translations, they all use different words. In the beginning, the word was whoremonger, and they changed that to homosexual in 1942 when the word homosexual came into the English language. Whoremonger, though, in the Greek is a male prostitute. So I don't know how a whoremonger related to a person like me. And it's just a means of control from some of these religious organizations, in my estimation, of how they perceive the Bible. And I think it really has turned a lot of people away from seeking a relationship with the Lord like I did. I was just blessed that something internally kept telling me to keep seeking, even though everybody kept telling me I was wrong. And then ultimately, after I wrote my book, I don't get into the scriptural debate with people on that end of it, as far as the clobber verses. My book is more about my journey and the verses that I learned how to navigate my life. And I actually took this book to a pastor once it was published, and she said, you know what, you're right. And we talked about those verses, and she goes, what you are saying and what you understand of the time and who it was written to and what's going on, you're right. And I said, why then do you continue to preach it in this way that's harmful? And she goes, because I'm following a denomination man-made doctrine, and it's my job. So that spoke volumes to me. And it made me feel like I was on the right track and gave me so much peace. And so having that knowledge continued me down the path of seeking more and wanting to know more about the Bible and really who God created me to be. And that's why in the beginning I said I don't put labels on myself, and I don't say I have a sexual identity and things like that. I won't place those on myself, because for me personally, my identity is a creation, a creation of God. I was made in his image, which is also a creator. If our God created me and I'm in his image, then that makes me a creator also, which means I can create relationships, I can create a healthy environment, I can create a business, and I can create all of these things if the energy is put in the right direction. And so that's why the sexual identities and things like that, for me, I don't go by. I know other people do, and there is nothing wrong with that whatsoever. We're all on our journeys, and we have to find belonging and a sense of comfort in something. But as caregiver or parent to children who are struggling with this, to try to just see the situation as this is a little person, a little child created in the image of God, and to nurture that instead of try to form it into something that you think it should be, which is so hard. I understand that, especially in our Kansas community, we want our children to be little images of us. And I heard somebody say one time, how did it go? He said, we say we raise our kids, and he goes, we don't raise kids, we raise cattle. And so he's like, we're not supposed to raise a kid, you're supposed to raise your farm animals. And so it made me chuckle, because it's so easy to say, what do we do with our child if we don't teach them the right way? Who is going to teach them the right way? And and the fears creep in of, if we don't say something, this big bad ugly world is going to grab a hold of them, and then they're just going to, oh my God, it's just going to be the end all be all. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, you can be supportive, and just let them express their heart and their needs to you. Be present with them. Just be present. And you don't have to have the words. You don't have to say, this is, not right, or this is right, or whatever. Be there and be present for your child. I mean, really, that goes a long way, even if you think it's going against what you believe and what you think is going on. If you also profess to be a Christian, which I know some people do and some people don't, it's turning it over to that higher power, and staying present with your kid and loving your child above all. And so I wish I would have had more of that. And I even came, out with my struggle of sexuality when I was 25. But I stuffed all of my feelings for years, knowing that I wouldn't be accepted. And as people, and what I've learned in my company and through my education to do what I do, is that we have, as humans, an emotional hierarchy of needs. And those emotions are to be loved, to be accepted, and to feel affirmed. And as children, we're to get those three things from our parents. And if any one of those three things is lacking to that child, they will search the outside world to fulfill it. So they will look for things in this world to love them. They will look for things in this world to accept them, or to affirm them. And so when you are dealing with that type of situation, if you feel like you're doing your best to love that child, to make that child feel accepted and to give them affirmation that they are going to be okay, that goes a long, long, long way to help them develop in a secure mind, basically. Because when those three things, or one of those three things, is not met, it creates insecurity. And from that insecurity comes a whole lot of other stuff. And so that's one of the things that I do a lot of in my business, is understanding. And even as adults, I coach a lot of adults who have struggles, who are not LGBTQ, but they're looking in this world for all of these other fixes, and to need to be affirmed by other people, and they need to feel accepted, and the need to feel love. And so that it goes across the board. It's not uncommon whatsoever, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's the other thing. We all have our struggles. It doesn't matter if it's an LGBTQ issue or something else. We all are humans. We have the same emotions. We have the same basic needs, and that's it. And so I only hope that through my ability to, through the grace of God, to push through and start the company I have, that I can help other people struggling with either their sexuality or children, to try to understand a little bit what might be going on, and open up lines of communication, which is key. Because I know when a child feels like they cannot communicate their deepest, darkest to their parents, that is a very, very lonely place to be. And so I can only imagine how hard it would be to have a child open up and say some things to you that you don't agree with, or think is detrimental, maybe even to their salvation. I'm sure that it's very difficult to go through, but it's to keep that child in mind and take yourself out of it. One of the things that I learned from my parents, as we since have healed, we didn't talk for 3 years, and it was a very hard time, but it's been 20 years since all of that happened now. And we're talking, and they have realized that, you know, who I am is who I am, and who I'm with is who I'm going to be with. And they've seen me become successful, and they've basically eaten their words and said, how can you ever forgive us? And for me, the forgiveness comes easy because I am forgiven. And so if I can't forgive my hurts, then I shouldn't be forgiven for whatever I see as sin or am blind to as sin. And so, you know, being able to work through all of those things and talk to my family and understand what they were feeling, and have the desire. I wanted to know what it felt like in their shoes, so then I could use that knowledge to help other people. And one of the biggest things that my parents said was they thought that the community would see them as bad parents, and they thought that they would be judged. They thought that because I was a particular way, that they must have let me be abused, or that even worse, they abused me, or something like that. They thought that I would die of AIDS. And my mom even cried one night and said she didn't want me to die of AIDS. And so that all is just a lack of exposure to people. And it's a lack of understanding and being just in what you know. And so people don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you're not exposed to, and that's no one's fault. And when it came to the biblical aspect of things, my parents were only doing what they were taught. And so how could I condemn them for doing what they were taught they should do in that situation? And I think that's a key takeaway that I got from my mom. And she's like, we just didn't know. And the conversation that I had with the pastor was actually based on a conversation that I had with my mom, because I'd come to these revelations about how I was interpreting the scripture. And my mom said, if it's really that way, then why aren't they preaching that from the pulpit? And I'm like, that's a darn good question. And that's why I went and started talking to pastors to find out why. And when I told that to my mom, what I had found, and since that time, after talking to that one pastor, I found several who have said very similar things. And I told my mom that, and she goes, I didn't know. And I was only doing what I was taught. And so with that, I cannot condemn her for doing what she thought was right too. So there has to be a willingness on both sides of the situation to learn and to grow. And so in particular, though, if you're dealing with small children or, young teenagers or whatever, it's such a confusing time. And the thing that I want to emphasize in this aspect, it's different in my situation because, like I said, I was in school in the 90s and it was different then. The world was a different place. It seems like it's changed so rapidly, and our children are bombarded with everything under the sun to try to persuade them this way and that way. And so that's what I mean. If you have a child that's struggling, to make every effort that you humanly possibly can do to be present for that child will make more difference than having the right words. And so I hope that this story of mine has helped someone in some way. And if anyone needs any more information about what I do or how I can help with my company, we can get some information put out there too. Also, the book, I have a link if somebody wants to purchase the book, that can be done as well. And then I did want to mention a few other resources to help you when you're trying to navigate all of these things. One of them is clgs.org, and that is Clobber the Passages. And it does talk specifically about the verses that I talked about, and gives a breakdown of kind of what I talked about. The other organization, if you're in a position where you want Christianity to be a part of your life and you don't know what that looks like, and you're worried of being condemned by churches or whatever, there is actually a website of gay friendly, LGBTQ friendly churches, and it's gaychurch.org. And that'll tell you in Kansas, every church that has registered on that says, we get you and we're here for you. So there's that. And then there's another website that is blog.smu.edu. And that just gives additional resources for you to look at to help you navigate through some challenges that are associated with this topic. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for Project Q&A to be doing what they're doing, to take the time to make a difference, bring people on and help educate. And I hope as the mission goes on that lives can be changed and hearts can be changed to create a more loving and kind and welcoming world. So thank you very much for letting me be a part of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jody. I'm trying to figure out how to get us both on the screen back up there.
I'm going to take a drink of water.
Speaker view. Thank you so much. I don't consider myself a Christian, but I have a strong faith in a higher power, and I identified with a lot that you had to say. And also growing up in the Bible Belt, growing up in Southeast Kansas, regardless of what your upbringing is, you are affected by the church. And so I really appreciated all you, and you said it with such compassion and serenity and connection. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think that's so important. Can everybody out there see me? I'm not gonna know. If you have any questions for Jody, we do have a little bit more time. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can post those in the comments and I will ask her those questions. But I have a few myself.
Sure.
I really identified with the people pleasing stuff, and
Yeah.
it's only something in the last couple years, after years of therapy and years of soul searching and also getting sober myself. We talked a little bit before we went live about my addiction, and a lot of what kept me out there were those voices in the head, what kept me up in active addiction. And I'm wondering, one, when did those voices go away? And two, whose voices were they?
Okay.
Who was speaking to you?
I heard the voices of my parents just repeating over and over again what they said. And when did they go away? Honestly, they went away after I stopped drinking and really grabbed on to what's my potential. I think I hid behind it a little bit to some extent as an excuse.
What is my potential? That's so important.
Right. And so I grabbed onto, I want to know just what I'm capable of. And there were times when at work, I was actually a mortgage underwriter, and I would have drank the night before and went into work. And I was early to work and early to leave, or late to leave, one of those kind of people. And I worked and worked and worked. And I thought one day, I wonder if this at all is affecting my sleeping ability, and like if this is hindering me in some way. And so I started to get a little bit paranoid, thinking maybe I'm not doing my best job. And so these were the thoughts that I would have. And then ultimately that DUI didn't come very long after I was having those thoughts. I think it was almost a prelude to what was getting ready to happen. I don't know. And so I'm like, it's time for me to find out what my potential is. And ultimately I kept working that career for 3 more years. And then finally was like, my potential is this business, and the time is now.
We call those moments in the recovery community, we call those moments God shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I love it.
So you mentioned you had reconnected with your family. I'm wondering, in that 3 years where you were disconnected, what kept you in Kansas? What kept you in the Midwest? A lot of us had to escape, myself included. And what kept you there?
That's an excellent question. I knew that no matter what, I couldn't escape myself. And so the familiarity of Kansas, like I said, I am a Kansas girl. I am a Kansas sky girl, Kansas air. It was those things. It was nature that kept me in Kansas. And I didn't feel like I would find what I was looking for if I left. And I still stand on the fact of it wasn't out there, it was in here, what I was searching for. And
well, I think I just have to I don't know if commend is the right word, but I have to lift you up for staying there. It's so important to know that there are people there like you still. And as an adult, I've learned that there are, and through Project Q&A, there's a whole community out there that we've brought together. So I think that's so important,
right,
to have that connection.
Absolutely.
Because as we discussed before we went live, there's still people out there that are struggling and looking for those connections.
Right. And you nailed it right there. It's like, truly, I don't know. I didn't make I really, in my mind, I never did say I should just leave. Like, I want to go to California. I want to go to Florida. I want to go. I never did have that desire in my heart. And so I actually think too that, that's another God thing. He wanted me to be here for a reason.
I kept looking for reasons to come back and because I lived this whole life, became a drag queen, and I kept looking for reasons to come back to Kansas to show who I was.
Right.
And then Project Q&A was born, or I
Yeah.
mean, Pride was born, and then Project Q&A, and
Gotcha.
the answer was right there before me. And so
Right.
I'm so grateful to this organization.
Yes.
Just a couple more. So after you divorced, after left your family for a little bit, or they left you rather,
Yeah.
um, and you were studying the Bible this whole time, were you attending church as you were studying, or were you just totally separate from that life while you were studying by yourself?
Yes, totally separate.
Wow.
I would go to church like for Christmas Eve.
So where did you find your community? Where did you find community?
I was strictly by myself.
Wow.
Yep.
I
know.
the fact that you're still here is a miracle.
I believe that too. And I lost everything. And that's, a lot of people have asked me that, what church did you go to? And I couldn't do it.
I just turned 40 and you said you were 41, and not to share business, but
well, thanks for that. I'm just kidding. It's okay.
It's such 40 was such a year for me, and looking back, when I was younger, I never thought I would get here to 40. I didn't see a future for myself.
Okay. That's very interesting that you say that, because when I was in my 20s, I was like, I ain't even gonna make it to 40. I was so reckless. I mean, when I got out of my marriage, I would drink and drive far more than I cared to admit, and was very on the edge as much as I could be, and still maintain a decent job, like in the banking industry, which I couldn't get too wild. But I did some things that were, I look back now and I'm like, oh, good Lord.
What did you reflect upon once you hit that milestone?
Of 40?
Yeah.
I can't believe this has happened.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
and ultimately, last year, as I had been doing my coaching service for 10 years. And ultimately it was last year in September, when after I turned 40, that I resigned from my job. And so I thought, I did make it, and I'm going to make it a freaking awesome next 40. I'm not waiting another minute.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's what it was.
Hallelujah.
Actually making it to 40 made me say, no more time sitting behind a desk making somebody else's dream come true. It's time for mine. So
we spoke a little bit about, what you might say to parents. What would you say to kids that might be struggling to come out to their devout families? Well, or just in general.
And the thing is, it's really a matter of getting to know that kid that's struggling, what their struggle is, and what they're most worried about. Because that's the other thing, is we all have certain fears that are all different than that. And they know their parents, they can anticipate some of the reactions. Although the reaction of my parents, like I said, was 10,000 times worse than I thought it was going to be. So it would really be a matter of understanding the fear of that child, and then probably not doing it alone would be another thing, just to have some support with that. But ultimately, to not fear being the amazing person that they were created to be. And
I love what you had to say about, if God is a creator, then I am a creator.
Right.
I think that's so true.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say.
That's all right.
Let me go to the Facebook chat and see if we have any questions.
Okay.
Somebody did comment, choosing your child is choosing God, which I love. That's so true. Do you have children yourself?
I do not have children. I do not have children. So that puts me in an odd, but yet very unique situation. And again, I feel like it was a God thing because I know what it's like to be a child, but I don't have the biases of a parent. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm able to speak into both because all of us are children, but not all of us are parents. And so I don't regret not having children either.
Mm-hmm. So I have a couple questions from Sarah Hopkins, who is one of our board members at Q&A.
Hi, Sarah.
What is your experience like consistently having conversations with individuals who are faith-based and yet so rigid in their understanding of it?
Say the first part of that one more time.
What is your experience like consistently having conversations with individuals who are faith-based and yet so rigid in their understanding of it?
Well, honestly, I believe that change is made through relationship and experience. And the more experience you have, and the more it becomes a person, like look at me as a person and continue to have those conversations, there is a certain amount of ingrained religion that no matter what I say or do will not change it. But they can see me, and then if they want to make that judgment call to say whatever they think of me, that's fine, and that's on them. I'm not trying to debate scripture. I'm just me. Take it or leave it. Either you're inspired by me and you see some Jesus there, or you don't. One of the two.
I think that's such like, I don't know. I have friends that are Christian, and also meeting you, I think it's when I see God in people, when I see serenity in them and I see forgiveness in them. So I definitely see God in you. And I don't understand, oh, this is the question I wanted to ask. What do you think of the Westview Baptist Church and, the followers there? Like, what do you think happened there?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. We have a divide in our nation on such a huge level. And I think ultimately people will jump on anything they can just to feel like they're a part of something. So,
I love that's so true.
Right.
Yeah, the bandwagon effect.
Exactly. And so I can't be the judgment of them. God will do that as he will judge me. And so that's what I go on. And, I actually had a gentleman ask me one time at a Pride event, he goes, what do I say to people that tell me I'm sinning? And I said, I don't know. He goes, well, am I sinning? And I said, I don't know. Are you? I mean, I don't know the motives of your heart. I can't speak for that. And
that's between you and God, really, right?
Right. And I'm like, if you feel like maybe you are, don't be afraid to take it up with him. And, but I can't say if you're sinning or not, because I don't know the motives of your heart. Only God does. So yeah, he kind of just looked at me funny with that one.
We want answers.
Right. It's like, tell me, am I? I'm like, I don't know.
Me. I want to dig in my own self. What are you talking about?
I had one thing I wanted to say to you as far as Christianity and that whole deal. So there's really in the United States, there's I don't like to call myself a Christian either, because I don't like the label, really. I don't like the label.
Oh, that even goes as far as the non-labels.
It does, but here's the deal. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, there is a difference between being a Christian and a follower of Christ. And so I have made my journey studying the character of who Christ Jesus the man was.
Oh, wow, yes.
And those red letter words that he spoke and the acts that he did in his character is what I have followed my life after. Christianity goes off of man-made doctrine and rules, which Jesus fought to reject.
That's what Oprah would call an aha moment right there.
Woo! Woo!
I have another question from Sarah, and my phone locked. How did scripture and your faith help contribute to your journey of forgiveness of your family and your friends? Well, you didn't really get into your friends and how did they continue accepting you, or like?
I had great friends.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. All my friends, to my knowledge, I didn't lose any friends. So
Yeah.
lucky on that one. So
the Kansan archetype is kind of beautiful that way.
right.
You know, there's a few duds, but for the most part, we come from a crop of people that are just like live and let live.
Right. Well, my people are my people. And mind you, I only had a handful of my close people. Now I have tons of acquaintances.
Yeah.
But my group of people, I knew they would be there for me. So read that question to me one more time.
How did your scripture and your faith help contribute to your journey of forgiveness with family, friends, etc.?
Gotcha. You know, and here's the deal. What I've learned about forgiveness and scripture is, in my estimation, again, the act of forgiveness is the closest that a person living can come to the likeness of Christ. When you're able to forgive, you are most like him, because he on a cross died, forgive them for they know not what they do. Right. And so in that moment, his last words, it is finished. Forgive them, it is finished. And so in understanding his ability to forgive, I feel like he gives me the strength to do it. I can't do it on my own. I mean, I want revenge just like the next guy. I am not perfect by any means. And people do piss me off sometimes. And I'll tell you what, I'm no different than anybody else on that front. But the scripture says, vengeance is mine, declares the Lord. And I'll tell you what, anyone who does me wrong, I give that to God and say, let vengeance be yours, because I know it could be far worse than what I could ever possibly do.
Mm-hmm. And when you are living in that forgiveness and of yourself, forgiveness of yourself, it kind of unblocks those pathways to like create the path for yourself.
Right. And
very well spoken, obviously.
Thank you. Gotcha. I got what you're saying.
You got what I was saying.
Yeah.
And I just have a comment from Cody. He's they're one of our Pride Planning Committee people.
Okay.
I don't have any questions tonight, but I want to commend you, Jody, on your willingness to share a remarkable journey with us. And I'm so happy to hear you have found your peace. Thank you. I think that's a good place to close her up.
Okay.
And stay on so we can exchange information after this. But this has been amazing.
Thank you.
I have a script that I'm supposed to say at the ending. Thank you for everyone who came through, and our partners, Independence Public Library, our new friends at the Gilbert Baker Film Festival for joining us tonight, everyone from the Pride Planning Committee and the board of Project Q&A for coming in, and Brandon, our director, for getting this together. Thank you, Jody. I had so much fun. Yes. I wasn't sure where we were going with this, but I enjoyed the journey of it all. And next month, be sure to tune in to our December Q&A. It'll be the third Wednesday of the month, I believe. And we'll be talking to Aaron Bunn, who will be discussing how you and your family can make small changes in your day-to-day life that provides a big impact on your health. So be sure to come back to Project Q&A for that. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. I don't have those right in front of me right now, but if you're on Facebook right now, you know where you're at. So once again, thank you, Jody.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Awesome.